Okay, let's give this a go. I'm going to tell you something. I'm not sure if I should tell you, but we're going to talk about how the universe started and what it means and how it all works. So, the very first thing we can talk about, what is this reality? Was it created by God? Is it somewhere that just came out of nothing, the Big Bang? Is this, I don't know. What is it? We have so many stories. Well, I'll tell you the most basic roots of how it works and the undeniable logical chain of progression. Okay? So let's start with how do you go from nothing to something? This is the most important thing. And you work it all the way back, you can't deny it. Here we go. We have, let's call it nothing in there. Now, what is nothing? You'd be like, well, it's nothing. Okay. Right? Well, that's obvious. Here's the thing, you can't even put this box around nothing. It doesn't exist because the second you put a frame around nothing, it is now a placeholder. So a true nothing before time, before reality, before existence doesn't even have a definition. Okay? You can't even put out that X. Very hard to think about. There is no starting point that moves to another point because there's nothing. There is no up, there is no down, there is no sideways, there is no light, there is no dark. None of the above, right? This would be what you would almost call null, not even zero, nada. Okay. So, that being said, this true non existence, because you have to think, what is existence? Right? How do you have a thing? Please follow. When we have, let's say, the universe, right? Reality, whatever that is. It's supposed to be like a spiral, like the universe. How do you measure one point over here to one point over there, the distance? Okay. Well, we use what are called light years. Why do we use light years? Light years are the measurement of time it takes for a single photon or whatever to travel from one point to another. And we use photons or light because light is the fastest thing in the universe, right? So yeah, I guess you could measure it in turtle speed, the constant rate of a turtle across, but that number would be too big. The faster the thing, the smaller the number we for math, and it's constant. Turtles aren't constant. Okay, so you have light years. What are light years? Light years, or the speed of a photon, whatever, is simply measuring how many rotations of atoms or whatever, electrons in atoms or whatever, um, the number of actions in an event. So what you're doing is the time or the number of actions to travel between point and point is what time is. Okay? We're describing motion. Time is motion. It's the relation of things changing from one to another. Okay? Now, that being said, how do you measure not only time, right? And we just learned that time is measuring the change in matter. Okay. How do you measure um, one object and another object as mass? right? How do you figure out what the size of this thing is and the size of this thing is? Well, we use rulers, we use measuring tapes. That's one way. What you're doing is you're going, okay, so we have two objects, right? We compare them to one another as for what is size or mass or whatever. So you would go, you'd have two objects, and then all you can do in this scenario is compare this one to this one. This is a single unit next to another single unit. Okay. So you have, this is a 1 unit size. Okay. Now imagine if then you take another object and you go, okay, this one's bigger. And let's say it's double. Now you have a 2 unit size. Okay. That's how we start getting differentiation in things. That's how we start getting novelty, right? Okay. So I took a little side tangent there. So when you have changes in like objects' actions or the reconfiguration of material objects, that's when you get time. All right. So if we're trying to understand what true nothingness is, you have to have a place, a void, or whatever, where there is no measurements. Okay. You can't measure change. You cannot, so there is no differentiation of things. So you get no linear story. And you have to, there's no units. There are no units. So no change and no units to understand what nothingness is. This is very important we understand what nothingness is first. True null. Okay, now here's the thing. This is key. This is so key. This is subtle. This is the whole thing. Okay, so let's say you have nothingness, null. What happens the second you recognize the null? You go from null plus 0 equals 1, right? What is that? So the second, right? This is, I'll show it in a picture. So this is null. We put a frame around the null, the observation, where you're consciously aware of the null. We now have 0. We have a unit of measure. The awareness of the null is 0. The 0 is now the placeholder for the void. We now have a canvas. How did we get that awareness of the null, right? How did it come into being? That is key. That is like so key. Well, the whole non-existence thing, the null, the absolute nothing, true nothingness is unstable. Any recognition of its existence is the second that reality begins. It is consciousness. How are you conscious of anything? How are you aware of anything? How is anything aware of anything? This, okay, marker is only real because of everything else around it. This marker is not a duck. This marker is not a skyscraper, right? So, that being said, null can't even exist. It is unexistable. It is only able to exist in contrast to all, to everything, to the all. You could say everything is in contrast to another in reality. Everything is only in existence or able to be with its opposing force, right? So simultaneously, for null to even exist in the sense that it's possible, you must have all. And here's the thing, all is also null. This sounds ridiculous. A lot of you are saying, Justin, you're just playing word games. You're just doing, this is just like a circular logical reasoning. It's not, okay? What is all? That's the next big thing, okay? What is everything? All right, well, that would be eternity, okay? Imagine this. Imagine you have a timeline, you have a place, you have the universe, right? And you start with one point, okay? That point then branches off, right? And now from there, you have another 2 points that both then branch off. Boom, boom. And from there, you have 4 points and they branch off, right? And then this branches off. And then also, inversely, at the same time, you have another set of things branching off. Okay, and this gets really redundant, right? And that goes on forever. That's like a fractal geometry or whatever. All is the experience and the definition that goes on and 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 on to the point that every possible scenario, every possible thing is explored. Every pattern that's able to be made in that sequence is. Okay? Now, here's what happens. When every single pattern and every single thing that can exist does exist, it all becomes uniform. Okay? What does that mean? It all becomes a complete covering, which becomes one single unit, one single thing. It all becomes a mono unit. It all becomes a whole, an all source, a monad, right? You see that? Those dots, they're all uniform, same sizes, same whatever. Extend that on for all of time or whatever. This turns into what is called entropy, where all things spread out in a way that energy becomes completely flat. Now, I have this little whiteboard here and I can show these squares, these points or whatever, but pretend that just went on endlessly. And then these squares, if you were to drop down and zoom into one section, you wouldn't be able to tell what point you are in relation to another point because there is no end. It's the all. We are now turning into an undefinable thing with no time and no measurable objects, no units of comparison. We have now just flipped around into a circle, a cycle of all back into null. These are both absolutes. An absolute cannot exist. It's impossible. They just converge into the same thing. The only way one can exist in comparison to the other, right, is through comparison. So null and all are both impossible, but at the same time a requirement for one another. If you're following along, God bless you at this point, because this seems like a bunch of word salad. But I'm telling you, if you can grasp this, it's incredibly deep. Okay. The awareness of null is only from the past. Okay. The awareness or the existence of null is only possible through the all. There are some people, they think that, okay, I'll show you an example. You have the very beginning, that point, and then we go into the Big Bang, right? And then the universe, it's spreading out. You have this big pow. Or you could say, it's God say, let there be light, right? This then dissipates out, entropy, right? And continues and spreads and spreads and spreads till everything's perfectly uniform. And then in reality, what's happening, because there's no novelty, you're flowing back into a single point again of collapse. It's all one and the same. Okay. The in between parts, that's the reality we exist in. But simultaneously, because we're all one object, we're just changing in dimensions and changing in configuration. It's all the same. All right. If I'm losing you, please make a comment. Okay. With this all being said, back to the null plus 0 equals 1. What is this? I get this, null, nothing, nada, right? Plus 0. All right, I'm following. The 0 is simply the recognition of that state, that ideal. But how are we getting 1? How is that equaling 1? The placeholder is a thing. So from absolute nothing to a placeholder equals a dimension, a whatever. Now, okay, but that's not stable. Just the general recognition, it's collapsing back into itself. Here's the thing. If you have the, let's say the null plus 0 equals 1, right? So the recognition of the state is now, but you also have not only a past or a present, right? You infer a future. How do you do that? Okay, so existence 0. But then we also have there was non-existence. All right. So this is past. This is present. And the combination of the two is future. 3 points. Now let's take, you have combination now. You can go, we had in the string of code, and you compare them all across against each other in every combination. So now you also have, so null 1. And then the other one is 0, 1. And then also you had null 0. And then you would have, you could inverse some of them, but you could do something like 1, 0. Or you could do 1, even 1, right? I just created a whole bunch of patterns out of just this simple thing. And from there, you're creating different units of measurement, different comparisons. You are now able from there to then you could even take these sets or whatever you want to call them and go, now I have, how about this? Now I have a 0, 0, 1, 1. Or I could have a 1, null, 1, 0. And you could see very quickly, then I could combine those. So now I have 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, null, 1, 0. I'm building. It's exponential growth. It's that explosion in reality. From there, stack, 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 exponential growth, hypercurve, you end up with getting what could start to be interacting patterns. Now, do these things have to be in a uniform linear succession? No. They can all start branching out into all directions. You can end up having weird quirks, spooky action at a distance, uncertainty principles, right? As this hyper expands out and you get these existence through definition moments, they talk about quantum entanglement. You have one particle or quark, whatever, over here, and you have one over here. This one is spinning this way, right? This one is spinning, how do I do this? That way, right? This one changes its direction of spin, the other direction. Now, inversely, contrasting definition existence, this one, not even connected in any tangible way, also then changes its direction. Why did it do that? Well, you have to realize that things exist simply by mirroring one another. They're units of comparison. The changes in time. This is happening everywhere, and you think that these two are not related. But you have over on this side of the universe and over on this side of the universe, these two particles, you're thinking like they can't interact. They can't do anything with one another. They are in a superimposed state of the exact opposite of one another by being in those two different locations. And they're defined by one another. That's how you get this quantum entanglement thing. Please tell me if I'm wrong. I've never heard anyone say that before. I think that's kind of the answer. Now, this grows and compounds on itself, and it looks like there's this no deterministic kind of quality to the universe, that there's this real randomness generation. It's not random. It's simply you're confused by time. You're confused by changes in everything, progression, right? It's all the same thing. It's all one static event happening at the same time, kind of. This is kind of the building blocks I have for understanding reality as it is that we exist in. This, I think, has profound meaning in it for what us humans would interpret, and why. Because consciousness, awareness, is threaded in to the very essence of reality. Everything is self-aware of itself by contrasting definition. They say that subatomic particles, like quarks or something, these little dots, are the foundation of reality. They're not. There's a layer underneath. It is information. What type of information? Is it a binary information? Like the information is simply things defining other things. That's it. Now, that all being said, we could then from there ask, what is our purpose? What is our meaning in everything? What are we here for? We are here to grow into novelty. We are here to explore all the possibilities. It is for everything. This is where it's going to get a little controversial. In order for good to exist, there must be evil. Right? That doesn't mean that you have to be evil. It doesn't mean that I am encouraging bad. It is simply what it is. It has to be there. You won't even have a good if there is no evil. You just have what is. So think of this. This is the positive way to reframe it. Okay? Every time you see an evil thing, you should think that means something good is going to come of this. There will be an inverse effect. It may not be in this moment in time, it may not be in an immediate way, but because it has to have a comparison, it will happen. And it'll be very good. The worse the evil, the better the good. Now, that doesn't mean bring that in, right? And that doesn't mean we have to be the agents to make that happen, but it will happen. And that everything we do should be growth towards novelty. That means making inventions, exploring new things. It means creating. Because we can't grow out the pattern of this fractal. We can't grow it out into being a larger reality without new things to contrast against that are different. Because if we just keep repeating, like we talked about with the squares, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and do that on forever, right? You're just going to end up with static collapse. We have so much that we can do. And if you want a better reality, create more novelty. Go out and invent something, write a new book, come up with a new idea. Do something that is new. All right. So that's all I got for today. I hope that makes sense. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.